What is the worst Sixth Doctor story? Hello and welcome to another video and possibly the start of a series. I was just thinking this morning, I'm thinking about what new videos to do and what Doctor Who subjects we can talk about. And one of the obvious ones is, you're talking about best and worst, but rather than doing top 10s or something like that, I thought, why not let's do something fun and work out the worst story of a particular era. And we're going to start with the Colin Baker era, the Sixth Doctor, which seems like a perfectly reasonable place to start, not least because there's not really that much to choose from. Depending on your point of view, there are either 11 Sixth Doctor stories on television or 7 Sixth Doctor stories on television, depending on whether you count Trial of a Time Lord as one story or 4 separate ones. Now, for the purpose of this, we're going to count it as 4 separate ones. But even then, again, that's 11 stories. That's not a lot to choose from in terms of the worst. Now, let's talk about which of these stories are generally considered to be not very good and up there with the worst, and then I'll tell you what I think is the worst Sixth Doctor story. The correct opinion, as they say. Now, obviously, the Sixth Doctor era starts with the Twin Dilemma, which is one of the most loathed Doctor Who stories of all time, and until Doctor Who magazine took their tail between their legs and lost their bottle, regularly came bottom of all time in fan polls. To be honest, I thought that was a fairly ridiculous placing, even when all we had was Classic Who, when it was still coming bottom in the early 2010s or whatever, after so many years of New Who. Yeah, no. I could chuck a rock at just the RTD era, RTD1 era, and hit half a dozen fucking stories that are worse than the Twin Dilemma. So no. In fact, I've actually always quite liked the Twin Dilemma. It's fun, it's silly, and I've always found Colin very, very funny in it as the mentally unbalanced new Doctor. So no, I think that's generally bollocks. Another story that's generally unpopular, at least in terms of fan polls, is Attack of the Cybermen. I'm not even going to countenance such a thing, because in my opinion, not only is it probably his best story, it's one of my favorite stories of all time. So yeah, you people are idiots, then let's just leave it at that. Now, the story from season 22, of course, that gets the most stick is Time Lash. And while there has been in recent years something of a revisionist attempt to try and make it, no, it's fun, it's a good laugh, it's fun. No, it really isn't. I know there's been this attempt to try and make out that it's like a kind of jolly fun Horns of Nimon season 17. And I love Horns of Nimon in season 17, and it's just not, because it's not funny. And it's boring. There's a difference between silly and stupid, and Time Lash falls on the wrong side of stupid. I'm sorry. That being said, would I consider Time Lash to be the absolute worst story of the era? No, it's close, but there is at least one other story that I would say beats it to the punch. Now then we're on to Trial of a Time Lord. Now, like I said, I'm judging this as 4 separate stories: Mysterious Planet, Mind Warp, Terror of the Vervoids, and Ultimate Foe. None of them are very good. Trial as a whole is not very good, and it probably is the worst single season of proper Doctor Who. Obviously there are worse seasons in New Who, most of it. That being said, of those 4 stories, I'd say 3 of them are at least kind of watchable, depending what mood you're in. Vervoids is probably the best of them. Even that, I think you kind of you really have to be in a very forgiving mood to enjoy even the best stories of trial, because it's cheap and nasty and not very well made and not very well written and just not very good for the most part. But the worst segment of trial, for my money, is Mind Warp. It's so bad. The script is so bad. It's difficult to believe it's by Philip Martin, who did such a good job on Vengeance on Varos. Maybe it was cut to shreds by Soward. I don't know. Of course, it's not. It's nonsensical, and famously so nonsensical that nobody knew what the hell was actually happening in it, and whether or not the Sixth Doctor had actually gone mad, whether he was pretending, or whether the whole thing was just an illusion cooked up by the Valyard. Nobody actually knew, as Colin Baker found out when he tried to find out, because he was bloody confused as to what the hell was going on. That's not a good sign, because it's not helped by a pretty terrible production. It's garish. It's very difficult to look at, in fact, for the most part. I mean, Nabil Shaban is still fun as still, though he's largely kind of defanged in this, I would say, in comparison to how he was in Varos. He's more kind of played for comedic relief with less of the sadistic menace that he had there. And it's just really embarrassingly bad. I mean, even Colin is terrible in it. It's said that Colin, didn't know what was going on, and he basically decided for himself that it was all an illusion and none of it was real, and so he took that as an opportunity to go sailing completely over the top. And Brian Blessed apparently decided to go sailing over the top with him, and it's just kind of it's not funny. It's not funny in a Tom Baker Graham Crowden ham eating contest. It's just kind of embarrassing and cringe and like, just stop it already. I really, 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 really dislike Mind Warp. I haven't seen it for God knows how long, because I just find it painful to try and sit through, even by the standards of the rest of Trial. And yet, I'm afraid the Wooden Spoon Award this time around, the worst story of the Sixth Doctor era, it's Mind Warp.